Howdy mates, how are we doing? Here's a part 3 video over at the Clifton Gorge State Nature Preserve. We're still here, however we're at a different point along the riparian habitat. But this time I wanted to talk about a different topic. You know how in my last video I was referencing about how you can test for water quality? You see, a way that you can test the water quality is not always by just water itself. Sometimes we can use a method that is known as stream quality monitoring, also called SQM. Now, what stream quality monitoring entails is typically you'll have some vials, something similar to what you use for storing your pills, and an extensive system of nets. And typically what you're doing is you stand usually towards the middle of the river itself, where it's a bit deeper and there's more presence of rocks. So what you do is you swish around the rocks. Now, when you're doing that, you want to make sure that you're facing downstream. That way, the sediments and other materials are going downstream and will then be caught by the net. Makes it a lot easier. But you're not necessarily looking for sediments. Rather, you're looking for something known as macroinvertebrates. Now, a great example of macroinvertebrates that I can name for you guys are different larvae. Now, typically, an example of larva is Dobsonfly Larva, which is also known as Hellgrammite. Now, given that it's called Dobsonfly, it starts its early life in the water as an egg. It will hatch, and it's this strange looking creature that inhabits the water. Kind of reminds you of looking at a caterpillar. Now, given that I said that, here is my example. See that right here? That is an example of a Dobsonfly larva, also known as a Hellgrammite. It's distinctive by looking like a caterpillar. Then it has two particular pinchers towards the front. I know you can't see it awfully too well, but this is actually just a young one. When they're a larva, they can actually grow as long as 2 inches, if not more. So I'm making sure that it's kept in water, because otherwise it would not survive. Of course, I will return it into the water, and it will inhabit a particular rock. But the point that I'm trying to make is the Hellgrammite that I just showed you, they are very sensitive to a number of different pollutants. And so, that being said, to see them in a river, that is excellent news. So that means, since we're able to see them in this very river, the Little Miami River, that means the water quality is really good. Because otherwise, if there were more pollutants present, the Hellgrammite would not survive whatsoever. Then again, in particular with Ohio, there's 3 different levels. One being the most sensitive to pollution. 2 is intermediate, so you'll typically see more of your crawdads. And then 3 is categorized as having the worst water quality. That's where you'll typically see some worms or, trying to think of another example, water pennies. So that's a method that can be used for assessing water quality. Now, another tip for you guys too, when you're near a river, like I am right now, one thing that I feel is not mentioned enough, and it should be, is when it comes to rocks in particular. I mean, I had to be very careful with it, but when it comes to rocks, you don't want to move them from their location. See, like, for me to find that Hellgrammite that I just showed you guys, I had to move the rock very carefully, pick them up, and then put it back down as I found it. You see, the thing is, what I've seen all the time when I was a volunteer and even an interpretive guide at this park, you would see rock stacks all the time. And the thing is, rock stacks pose an issue, especially if they were collected from the stream itself. You see, whether you realize it or not, the rocks that are found, even here, underwater, several hundred macroinvertebrates are calling that rock home. They're either inhabiting on it or beneath it. And so, when you do that, when you take them away from their source, they won't survive. They need to have, the macroinvertebrates need to have a water source in their early life before they go into adulthood, and then will eventually develop into flies. So, even dragonflies, too, for another. They also start their life in the stream as a larva. So just keep that in mind, you guys. Please keep the rocks in their place as much as you can. Or if you do decide to do any rock stacking, try to find rocks that have not been in the water. Like, they're already dry, it doesn't look like anything's on them. But otherwise, yeah, you want to avoid moving rocks, unless if it's for a particular research purpose, such as stream quality monitoring. So, alright you guys, take care, have a good one, and of course, journey on a journey is onwards. Take care, folks. See ya.